Thank you, listeners and affiliates, for making the FishyFins.com internet radio network a success.
West Wall Boats, kayak experts selling the only pedal kayaks with a reverse, pedal forward or backwards. Need a paddle fishing board, SUP, or kayak? You need West Wall Boats Shallow Water Outfitters. Comfort is king. In a native ultimate angler watercraft, you are king. If standing is your thing, they have paddle fishing boards complete with a Yeti. If you can dream about doing it, West Wall can help get you there. WestWallBoats.com. WestWallBoats.com. Located next to Giggles on Tamiami Trail, Sarasota.
So we just landed about 150 to 65 pound tarpon. We're now floating to Reviver.
Well, I always like to answer questions when we get them in our Fishy Fins Facebook website. If you ever go to Fishy Fins Radio and Facebook, you can go in there and like our site. You want to ask us any questions. We've got a lot of pro staffers in there. We're actually all set up to respond as Fishy Fins. So if you ask anybody in there anything, you're going to be talking to a pro staffer, somebody that knows what they're talking about. And we did get a question about fishing licenses in the state of Florida. If I'm over 65 years old, do I have to get a fishing license in the state of Florida? If you are over 65 years old, you do not have to pay for the fishing license in the state of Florida. However, you do have to register and get a license. It's free. You can go to any discount store, any bait shop, tackle shop, most of them do it. And they do it for you for free. Make sure you bring your identification, your Florida driver's license with you, and your identification with you. And of course, but you do have to have it. So you do have to get the card. I believe it's still a green card. Dad's got one. So you don't have to pay for it. You do have to get one. You do have to register. You do have to have it on you when you're out fishing. And if you don't have it, it's, well, it's up to the game warden or the officer that asked you. They may fine you. So definitely go down, register, get the license. It's free and enjoy it. Now, just a sidebar on that, if you want to keep snook, you want to keep any game fish, anything that requires a permit or a stamp, you must pay for that permit or stamp. So you can't, just get this over 65 senior citizens free license and then, be able to keep snook and these other game fish that require special permits or special stamps and stuff like that. So although the base license, for freshwater, saltwater is free, you do have to pay to add those stamps, permits, stuff like that on it. Now, if you're over 65 and you're in business, you've got to have a business license. You've got to have a commercial stand, you've got to have a commercial license, you've got to pay for it. So this is only residents, this is non-business, non-commercial, this is non-entity, this is you, the person with the driver's license. And so you do have to have the license, it's free, and enjoy it. So thanks for the question, and anything else, just ask us. Have a great day. Well, we're going out to Bruce Nelson on the Caloosahatchee River this morning. Bruce is a fisherman, a kayaker. He's a veteran. He recently had knee surgery. I know he spent a lot of time at the VA here getting all that done. And so he's back in his kayak again. The weather's clearing up and he's getting out there and doing a little fishing. And excuse me, back with the coffee again this morning. And I'll have to say that anybody that has knee replacement surgery, hip replacement surgery, something where you're being told to go out and do some physical therapy, it's way better to sit in a kayak and pedal around the harbor and enjoy it than to sit in your living room and stare at the wall on an exercise bike. So Bruce is actually looking into buying a kayak, something that has a foot pedal type of pedaling mechanism. And matter of fact, I believe Westwall Boats, so we have a little video clip in here from westwallboats.com, and they carry that model of kayak. So if you have, knee replacement surgery, you got to get out there and do some physical therapy, you like to fish, definitely get down there to westwallboats.com and check out their kayaks. And Bruce is going to talk to us about it. We're going to go out to Bruce right now. Let's not waste any time. Bruce, thank you very much, and we're heading over.
Hey, good morning, Frank.
Hey, Bruce, what's happening this morning, bud?
Oh, not much. Thinking about heading out on the water.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think this is the first morning in about 3 days I woke up and it looks like a great fishing day out there.
Yeah, it does look good. I'm just curious about the winds.
That's the worst part, I think. We're supposed to have those afternoon breezes that kick in. I don't like it at all. It always blows me up into the mangroves when I'm trying to fish the flats. I hate that.
Right. Yeah, I won't be able to get down to the mouth of the river. I'll be up here on the river, so I don't know. Maybe I'll stay on the backside of some of these islands and see what's going on. There's been jack crevalles rather, along some of the seawalls here lately. I caught one the other morning. Pretty good size, and I was just bank fishing though.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I love catching just about any jack. They fight so good, and they'll hit just about anything moving through the water pretty quick. So, you get into a school of those suckers. I tell you, around here, some reason, about 10:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, when it really warms up the water, they just go crazy around the banks, seawalls. They seem to run after those bait fish and just boil up and go crazy.
That's what they were doing. Bait fish were leaping up out of the water, almost clearing the top of the seawall. You fools. You ain't getting nowhere in that grass. There's some cats up there.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. It's hysterical.
Yeah, I decided, what the heck, and I just threw my bait over that way, and bam, off it went towards the deeper part of the water, away from the wall. I said, well, I got something for sure. And sure enough, it was a jack crevalle. It was pretty good size, but I'd rather caught a redfish or a snook or a trout.
That's just it. It's and sometimes that's what happens to me. Especially if I'm in the canals, those jacks seem to really like to run the canals, and I guess because of, like you say, all that bait fish running around, and you'll be fishing for a snook and everything, and I don't care what kind of bait it is. If you get in front of a hungry jack or a couple of them competing for a little food, it's going to grab it and run with it. That's for sure. But they're fun. They're a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah. I've been seeing schools of bait fish in the river here lately too. So
well, we're seeing the same thing. I think with this warm weather, the springtime rains start, the tides start getting up a little bit higher. We're getting closer to the sun, so the gravitational pull of the sun, pulls that water up a little bit higher here around Florida. So it's good to see now we're getting some water up in the canals, warm water, and the bait fish are going crazy. I tell you what, Bruce, up here, there are some big fat trout all over the place. So I think those big fat trout, the big fat reds, are up there spawning. And, there's the fiddler crabs, the rock crabs, the blue crabs. I mean, there's just so much food up here in the estuaries. that they're
You're talking about up in the river itself?
Exactly, yeah, up in the Peace River and the Mayaca River, you know, up around the mangrove roots and those where you get into those little keys. Even around, yeah, I know you guys in the Caloosahatchee have a lot of the same similar water. You know, you get into that backwater and you get into those crabs and the big red.
Yeah, I get up to where I launch. I launch right by Midway Island and Beautiful Island, they call it. It's a nice little calm backwater area there. I mean, surprisingly super calm, as a matter of fact. I figure maybe if I can get out there today, if it's fairly calm, then I can get out there by like Midway or the mangroves on Beautiful and up by the railroad trestles. I'm hoping maybe there's some fish up in there. You know, that's the reason I was asking if you were seeing these reds and that up in the river. And trout down by some of the docks near the Edison Bridge. I'm about a mile from the Edison Bridge at the one dock that I'm catching a lot of trout at. And I'm kind of curious if they're coming further upstream or not.
Well, for us, you know, the trout are just any place where we have grass up here. I mean, you know, you lived up here before. You know how it is up here. You know, you get into those grassy flats, and even around, you get up around the Peace River, around Harbor Heights up there. And, you know, you get into some of those grassier areas, and there's going to be trout all over them right now. I guess just because they're spawning, you know, they're real fat. They're up in the high grass. And even the reds, I mean, they're just up there under the mangrove roots and just getting gigantic. We have a local captain here, Tom, that was out fishing, and he posted a picture of one he caught. He wouldn't say, of course, exactly where, but it looked like it was somewhere out there around Cape Hayes and in those inland areas. And I think probably Turtle Bay, around that area someplace. And that sucker, man, it had to have been the biggest red I've seen on this coast so far this year. I mean, it was huge. So it looked like one of those ones the guys over on the East Coast pull out of the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I see the ones that Dee posts from, I think it's a Native Watercraft page. I think she's one of the fishers. She posts pictures of those great big bull reds. When they talk, you know, it's like they only find them over in the Indian River and so on like that. I've commented one time, she got come over here to the West Coast, we got them.
It is, you know, there are some big ones here on this coast. You know, it really, you got to get it. You guys are in kayaks, so you really get in there in shallow water. You're quiet, really stealthy, so you get up on those big fish here. And it's hard to do. They're just not as abundant or not as quite. You know, you get around the Space Coast of Florida, like you say, the Banana River, Indian River, the Mosquito Lagoon up there. All that stuff, I mean, you get in those big estuaries on the other coast, and, you know, they're spacious. It's really clear blue water, and you could actually even sight fish from a kayak because, you know, they've just got schools of big reds out there all over. And
it's like... It gets that way up around Homosassa and Crystal River up there in Citrus County and that too.
Oh yeah.
On our west coast, we get some. There's some huge fish up there. I've seen them on Average Angler Adventures more than one time. Old Glenn Paul's hauled in some pretty good sized ones.
Yeah, they do. You know, like I said, you get up in there. You really got to get up in the mangroves. You got to really do some serious fishing to get them on this coast. And, and you definitely see them. Matter of fact, I was watching some guys up in Pasco County too. Scott gets up there and he gets into some big redfish. I see mostly around here, but they're using like these really cool looking spoons now. And you know, last year everybody was into the jerk baits, and the year before that it was a rubber shads. And it looks like this year these guys on this coast are really getting into reds with these really nifty little spoons. Some are copper, some are white with red spots, but it looks like a lot of spoon fishing for them.
I've got some spoons in my tackle box, but I haven't pulled them out lately. Honestly, I've been using some soft baits on jig heads, and seem to be doing real good with them.
Well, I saw that one you posted on your Facebook page. What was that soft bait you were using? I can't even. Let me see if I can find it.
That was Logic's Lures.
Oh, okay, yep.
And first time I went out and tried them, boom. I mean, they were just tearing into me like crazy.
But, you know, the rubber works good. Those plastic baits, they really work good. The action on them is good. The fish, you know, when they bite into them, they seem to really think they got a hold of something good because they're kind of squishy. Are you using any kind of like a bait scent, or are you using them just right on the hook?
Those were scented, yeah, as a matter of fact.
Oh, is that right? Right out of the package?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're scented just like the Gulp is. I use the Gulp too and have good luck with it.
Yeah, I've used the Gulp, those white jerk baits, and they do work good.
Yeah, I've used as a matter of fact, I've caught some really big black drum up there in Newport Richie on the peeler crab.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
They've got 1 inch and a 2 inch peeler crabs. I did it on the 2 inch ones. Those work really good.
Yep, I got the 1 inch in my plastic pack right now, as a matter of fact, and they do work very well. I've caught a couple of redfish up here on the flats with them. As a matter of fact, for me, I put them on just a light line with a nice 40-pound leader and just kind of let them float out there across the flats with the current, and they just pick them up and run. They do work good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've jigged them a little bit, and I've allowed them just to drift, kind of like almost a free line underneath the cork even has worked, and surprised me. You know, my buddies are all, you're never going to catch anything like that. You need to have this, you need to have that. And I'm like, nah, come on, man. I know shrimp biting, shrimp's the main thing.
Oh,
but,
sure.
But these things, they're going, well, you got to have live bait, man. You got to have live bait.
Nah, it's just not the truth. I'll tell you what, honestly, Bruce, I'll go out fishing next to somebody and they're using live bait, I'm using artificial bait, and I'll do as well, if not better, than they will. It's, if the fish is there, if it's hungry, you present the bait right, usually, and I tell you what, a lot of these baits anymore, especially the artificials, you don't have to work them. You reel them in, the bait will work itself, it's scented, it's ready to go, so they really do a good job.
Because when I was growing up, I used to come down here every summer. My Nana had a house up there around St. Pete, and I always bought shrimp. Always. It was go up buy like 2-3 dozen shrimp. I think they were ridiculous price, low price back then. We're talking mid-60s or so.
Yep, I know. Believe me, I know what you're saying. Now, matter of fact, I lived in Pearl Harbor. We had a guy that used to go shrimping, and we just buying from him. I think I get like 2 or 3 dozen shrimp for 50 cents. And they were big shrimp. I mean, these weren't like you see nowadays. These are big shrimp.
Yeah. We had I'd go up the street, and there'd be a kid out on the curb of his house.
Uh-huh.
And he'd have big, it looked like an old refrigerator that had been converted into a live tank.
Oh, yeah.
Up in the garage, and he'd run up there and bring you back down a metal bucket with all your shrimp in there. And, like I said, getting like $1.50, you get half a dozen shrimp,
Oh, yeah, they get a pile.
A dozen shrimp for $1.50 or something like that. And I just sit on the dock. My Nana didn't have a dock behind her house, but her business manager lived on one side, and another couple who had come from Germany with her when they were kids lived on the other side. They both had docks. You can fish over here. Come on over and sit.
Oh,
I fall asleep on the bench on the dock and wake up in the morning and my bobber's underwater and the pole's going back and forth,
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when I first started doing it, I was only about 9 years old, so staying up all night was a rough thing. But I had a blast, that's where I've learned to fish in saltwater. I never was that good as a freshwater fisherman, ever. I get out down here on the Gulf, and I love fishing down here.
Oh, yeah,
all the fish are good to eat down here.
Well, not only that, but when you're out there fishing, especially in the Gulf, you never know what you're going to pull up. And freshwater, you got bluegill, you got some bass, you got some crappie here and there, and catfish and carp. But you get out in the Gulf, and catfish and carp. You get out to the Gulf, and the sky is the limit. What are you fishing for? Whatever you want. So it's pretty cool. You're on the Caloosahatchee, so you got Punta Rasa out there. I mean, beautiful fishing.
I didn't hear you.
You're on the Caloosahatchee there, so you've got Punta Rasa, you got Bolkelia, all that area, right outside the mouth of the Caloosahatchee for you.
Yeah, I got to get my paddling strength up to get down there, I think, this year. Last year I lived a little closer over in Cape Coral to Matt was saying I could get out into the backside of some of the mangroves over there. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty far upstream now, so I think I measured it out on Google Earth, one of the path measuring things that's on there. And I think about 14 miles from Iona.
Ooh, that's a long paddle.
Yeah, but I keep meeting this guy over here, and he's got it's a conventional type of kayak.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to him one day. I said, "So how far are you going down there to the Centennial Park or something?" "No, I'm going all the way down to San Annabelle."
Oh, wow.
And I kind of looked at him. It's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm thinking, yeah, I'll be back by dark. I thought, man, there's no way. There's no way. I know.
No way. That's a lot. Especially God help him if he's got the current going out and the wind coming down the river.
Yeah. See, when I came back in that day, I had the current coming in with me, which makes it rough on this river here because the flow of the current of the river downstream is strong, so you get a lot of chop coming back in.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the wind at my back, though, fortunately. But that just made the chop even worse. So.
Yeah, that's just it. When you're in a kayak, too, it's not just the wind, but even when you got the wind behind you and you're dealing with the chop, it could be a real back-breaking pain in the butt getting back home.
Yeah, well, I made it back in. That was a long day. I think I covered about 15 miles, 16 miles that day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I had a bowl of soup. As a matter of fact, I think some soup and turned the TV on and I stretched out, and man, it was a good movie coming on. I still can't remember what the movie was, but it was a movie getting ready to come on, and next thing I know, I thought I had slept and it was like early morning, 7 o'clock. Like 7:15 in the evening instead. I was like, holy cow, what in the world did I just do?
Too funny. I do it all the time. You know what? That's all right. You need to sleep. That's a long paddle. It feels good.
Oh.
Well, let me ask you, Bud, what are you guys catching out there? You've been able. I looked on your Facebook page and I saw some trout. I saw you nailed the catfish out there too. You're all over the river up there. Beautiful shots you got. Even the little alligator.
Yeah. The last time that I was out and went downstream a little bit, which was just a few days ago, bumped into some. They were boat dock pier that comes way out. I don't know if you know where the Tarpon Street Pier is there.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, yep.
Okay, it's just upstream from Billy Bowlegs Creek and the Edison Bridge there, but it's a nice pier. It goes out about 600 yards or so. There's a boat dock, maybe a quarter mile or less up from there. Uh-huh. And a couple of guys were fishing, and that's where I caught them trout that day, so I kind of anchored up and started tossing, and between the three of us, they were all 9 and 10 inches was the only problem, but they were sea trout. And we were on them like anything, and then here come the porpoise in, and bye-bye fishing.
That's it.
After the porpoise left, the only thing we caught was ladyfish and catfish.
The only things the porpoise didn't want.
That drove me nuts. I was like, wait a minute, what in the world's going on here?
I'll tell you what. Well, Boo, you were all over the trout before that, though, huh? Sweet.
Yeah. I was hoping I could get into the bigger ones, because usually if there's small ones around, there's big ones around too, so.
Oh, absolutely. What would you have on the line? What kind of bait were you using?
I was still using that Logix.
Is that right? Very good.
Yep, glow with the chartreuse tail.
That chartreuse is sweet right now. I don't know whether it's because the rain's got the rivers, a lot of algae starts to bloom, and it gets kind of that greenish tint to that normal beige. So I don't know if that's it, but that chartreuse is hot right now. Yeah, the other morning when I was catching them trout, the river was still clear. We hadn't had the rain and so on. That's the reason I'm kind of curious today to see what it's like out there, just to find out how it went. It should be. Well, what are you guys looking at with that Okeechobee release? How much rain do we got to get before you deal with that this year, do you think? That I don't know. They really shut us down last year. It was a mess. It was bad. Really bad. I mean, even over in Cape Coral, here by the beach over there, you couldn't catch anything but catfish. The only place you could catch good fish was to go up on Matt Lachey and the Pine Island Bridge and that. Sure, you got to get out of the mouth of the Caloosahatchee and away from that fresh water to get onto the fish again. Yeah, and it was all coming out and going south. So I imagine even down by Marco Island and that, it probably affected it pretty badly. I'm sure. Yeah, that sucks. So you guys are going to get in there now and get some fishing done before they start pulling that crap. Is that or get my arm strength back up and. These better save up a whole bunch of money and start getting one of the propels by Native. Gonna get out on the blue water. Yeah, pedal that thing. I believe I could make that trip to Pine Island or Sanibel, paddling and pedaling combined. Oh, sure. As a matter of fact, bicycling as I do. My legs are pretty strong still to this day, even after I had knee replacement surgery back in September, so on my right knee. Oh, is that right? Oh, wow. Yeah. How's that affect the kayak? How about, they got those ones that you could paddle with reverse now, too. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. That's the one I want to try and get into eventually. Yeah, I was looking at, there's a place here called Westwall Kayaks, and they're up here on North Port Charlotte on the left side, leaving town. And they were just put a thing on Facebook. They had Ken in there, and he was using one. Matter of fact, he caught a bunch of redfish yesterday while I was in here talking about the rain. He was out there catching redfish. And I saw it. He had pictures of redfish and trout. So I saw that. Yeah, but he was using that day wherever he hit. Oh man! Well, I know he's a big DOA fan, and he uses a lot of DOA plastics, and he does good, buddy. I'll tell you what. But yeah, you had that reverse kayak, pedals in reverse. It looked really cool, easy to maneuver, and really easy on the arms and the shoulders, that's for sure.
If I had the current going with me, going downstream, it'd be fine. Coming back home 14 miles might be a bit more than I bargained for.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, by the time you're done, you want to have a good time and get a little exercise, but you don't want to get wiped out either. And, this time of year, you get a little storm that blows up, and it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. Go ahead, Bruce, I'm sorry.
I'm pretty good at scoping out places close to where I'm fishing at that I can, well, it looks like a storm. I'm going to this beach here.
Exactly. Yep. I do the same thing.
I'll post up in there in a heartbeat. I'm not crazy. I won't stay out there in that water too long.
Yeah, you got to be careful. As a matter of fact, we put in at down there off of the South Burn Store Road. We put in on that the ramp out there that comes out of Mount Lachey, and so it kind of puts you right there in the middle of between Sanibel and Bulkilia and the Charlotte Harbor and the Kayaka. The Mayaka. Good Lord, it's Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And so, it's really a good place if somebody wants to put in their kayak boat or what. Great location there, too. Save you some rowing.
There was a little park up there right off of Burnstone Road the kayak ramp was closed last year, so
wow.
I couldn't get in there to launch from there. Plus the ride was about 7 miles or something like that, so.
Yeah, that's a good haul.
Back out of that one.
Yeah, it is. That's a good haul. Then you got to row, then you got to haul again. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, about the longest I've covered has been about 4 miles one way to get to launch, and that was in Cape Coral at Four Freedoms Park down there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And you're in a little basin there is what it's called. I caught a bunch of catfish in there. I was going to paddle around and go out into Redfish Bay out there, Redfish Cove, whatever it's called. But the day was looking like it was going to storm up because you could see the clouds coming from the Gulf. So I stayed in the basin for about an hour and a half and then paddled back in, loaded up onto the trailer, and bicycled it on home.
Oh, yeah.
Get a lot of looks from people, though, when you're riding down the street towing a kayak. It's really cool because people go, "No, that's a good idea."
Yeah, they're a couple of years behind everybody else in the world when it comes to outdoor sports here, I think. Everybody's used to just throwing a boat on a trailer and hauling it someplace. But
yeah, well, I know friends of mine had kayaks for 2 or 3 years before I finally got mine. And I was jealous. I was like, man, I know they're getting into that skinny water stuff where you could just flip right up underneath of a mangrove, and sure enough, they were.
Well, it's true. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at Beautiful Island, that whole area that you fish at here on Google satellite. And, you have a kayak. I mean, all that whole area. I mean, I know you're pulling trout out of there up and down where the trusses are. And up to I-75, but with the kayak, I mean, you can get into these little estuaries. I know you were talking about that one that runs parallel to 75 on the north end. I think that's Popash Creek, they call it, in Stroud Creek. And I mean, with a kayak, even a canoe, something small like that, you can get up in those areas. And you know what, bud? You're right. That's where all the big fish are hiding. That's where they're feeding. That's where they're spawning. That's where they're at.
Yeah, I see people catching them on, like I said, like on the kayak shows and that years ago when I was first thinking, I'd like to have one of those, but I wonder how good they are for fishing. So I start finding shows on, World Fishing Network, things like that, and I'm like, good grief.
Oh, yeah.
How are they catching marlin with a daggone kayak?
No, I mean, it's incredible. And, I've seen these guys like Ken and these guys here in Charlotte Harbor. They'll put in at the kayak launch. There's one right up here off of Spring Lake. And actually, they built one just for kayaks and canoes, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you're talking about Sunrise Park there.
Yeah, that's where they put it, right? Sunrise Park. And that's in there.
Yep.
It's right.
I used to fish off that little pier right there.
Great little fishing spot, yep. As a matter of fact, that snook that I posted the picture of, I caught at the Spring Lake Pier, the next bridge over. So, as a matter of fact, so these guys, they ramp right there and put their kayaks in, and on a nice day, I mean, they're running around Cape Hayes, they're getting up around even Placida, so, you can go around the West Wall and go right around Cape Hayes, Turtle Bay, that whole area in a kayak, and be in pretty skinny water the whole time. And
yes, that's why I wanted to get the kayak when I lived in Port Charlotte, because I lived, at first I lived on Cordell, which is right there off of Lakeside. I think it's Lakeside is the name of it.
I think
it's on the the north side of Spring Lake.
Yep, I think you're talking about Lakeview.
Then I moved on the other side of Spring Lake over onto Lakemont, which is, I live right on the corner of West Tarpon and Lakemont there.
Uh-huh.
And I'd go up and fish under those bridges and pull mangrove snapper all morning long. I'd go up the end of Midway same way.
Oh.
But I always look on the maps and go, man, I know this place. You know, I'm fishing, catching redfish and so on off of the pier at Sunrise Park.
Oh.
And I know if I could just get up that way a little bit there on something, a small boat or something. But everybody told me, you really can't get a small boat up in there, man. It's too shallow. You need a canoe or something. And that's when I first seen one of the fishing shows, and might have been Henry Woschuk had a kayak out one time on his show or something, fishing the flats, and I thought, oh, that would work.
Yep. Oh,
you know, he's talking about, he said, yeah, we can get into less than 6 inches of water, and I'm thinking, really? That's like what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I see these guys do it, and they're pulling these gigantic fish. As a matter of fact, there was a video I saw, I think it was on YouTube, and there was a guy out here fishing on Charlotte Harbor, and he was trying to get into some really big redfish up on the flats around Redfish Key. And, you know, he finally hooked into one on a jerkbait. He's on a kayak, and that sucker took him for a ride. I mean, he was going, baby.
I've had snook pull me in the mangroves. I broke the tips on 2 fishing poles last year. A Shakespeare ugly stick back in May,
wow.
And that's when I bought the Penn Allegiance that I was fishing with down here in Nat Lachey and got pulled into the mangroves. Probably had the rod about maybe 6 weeks when it happened. It was in like first part of July.
Yep.
And snapped it about 4 line guides down from the tip. Yeah, so I anchor now. Yeah, both times when I got pulled in the mangroves, I lost jig heads and soft baits, which wasn't too bad. But besides breaking the tip of my rod, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And there's probably, and I hate to leave line in the water because of the trapping problem that's out there with birds getting in it, but
absolutely
wasn't anything I could do. It probably had 6 yards or more of line out when it went into the trees.
Oh, yeah.
And as soon as the tip snapped, it cut that braid stick. It probably was, yeah.
Yeah, because usually I know the graphite, man, if it just snaps like that, it does get sharp as hell. I mean, you can slice your hand open on that shit, so yeah, it'll cut through that line. But I do like it, though. That ugly stick is a hell of a fishing pole. I mean, it could take a beating and really usually get bent up pretty good, but sounds like you had a big fish that knew what it was doing. It got you.
Yeah, close as I could tell, he was 3 foot, easy. And I didn't get a clear look at it. It didn't come up out of the water very far. It came up, shook its head, and then dove back down. And I'm watching the fish and watching the line in the water, and all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, oh no.
Not again.
Straight into the trees. But I thought, well, maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe the kayak will hit and it'll just stop, you know. Well, the pole hit first. Then, of course, too, I had to back myself out of that mess. I carry 2 rods with me most of the time, so if something does happen, I can still keep fishing. And
Yeah, I generally have an extra one strung up with something in case I start to get bored and not catch anything. I just grab this and go to bottom or something different, you know. So, yeah,
right.
I generally have a couple of different rods. But I tell you what, though, now, what else you getting up there? You're around Buzzard Roost over there. I know you like to fish that whole area, and the trout are good. Are you able to get into any snook up around there yet this year? Or how you making
I haven't myself, but I have heard of people catching them up by the railroad trestles. One guy said it's in the evening he's catching them, so I haven't taken my kayak out at night yet.
Oh, sure. Well, right now the bugs are going to be pretty thick. It rains, so it's going to be a whole lot of bugs.
With the Caloosahatchee, with the Okeechobee, waterway there, we get these things that look like small destroyers coming through, you know. And these people, they throw good 4-foot wakes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're not wakes. It's like a wave coming in.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been in some pretty strong ones. I was near the seawall one day, and well, that looks like a big wave coming, and I looked, and there was one of them, you know, aircraft carriers going up the waterway.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh, no. And it slammed me into the seawall, and I started paddling out a little ways from it. And they die down quick, but it's a pretty good trough that you're up on top and then bam, down. And
oh, yeah.
So, you know, if I was out there at night, it'd be a little more shaky, I think, because I wouldn't see them coming, wouldn't be able to prep myself for it. But,
yeah, that's just it. You know, there are some big boats. I was out there shooting some houses one time, and there are some big cruisers that come through there. And even if they're not, you know, up on plane and they're going fairly slow, I mean, those suckers pull some big ass water. And
Yeah.
so you're gonna.
Yeah, these things weren't flying. I mean, I have a bigger problem with the 20-footers that come ripping up there and that, and they throw big wakes off and everything else, and rooster tails and all that. These guys are just puttering along. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is a no wake thing, but you can't avoid it with something that heavy and that wide. But at least they're not going plainly.
Yeah, that's just it, and it just can't be avoided. As a matter of fact, I see it all the time. And you're heading underneath the bridge, it says, one place will say 25-mile-an-hour limit zone for manatee, and then one, a half a mile away says low wake. And, what does that mean? How big is your boat? And there are a lot of things come into play, so what does that mean? But so, yeah, I appreciate it, bud. It looks like you guys are doing good on trout up there. I hear you get any idea what they're getting snook on around the trusses up there?
No, not for sure. I think they're using live bait, though.
It does. You know what? The white bait and the shrimp always work good. When all else fails, you put a nice big shrimp on there, and something's going to grab that sucker.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that. One guy I know was using the thread fin.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
And the greenbacks and that. But most everybody I've talked to, it seems like they're using live bait more than they are the lures in that form. So.
Yeah, I was actually up at the Englewood Pier, and there was a guy out there that spent the morning catching fiddler crabs and had a nice bucket of them. And he was the only guy on the pier that had fish. He had a couple of nice size sheephead he caught off the pier and had a nice drum too. And he was using fiddler crabs, so he was doing pretty good on the pier out there.
I used to take a shovel, and I've got a bait bucket that's just plastic with the holes in just in the lid, right? Mm-hmm. And I'd scoop up a bunch of sand and throw it in there, and I'd walk down to the water and put the lid on real good, and then fill it up with water and keep shaking it until all the sand came out. And I keep doing that. Well, I took it home, and I'm like, damn, I need a way to keep these things alive so I can use them the next day when I go fishing in the morning. Mm-hmm. Well, what the heck? Even if they're just, if they're just frozen or whatever, it won't matter. So I put them in a Tupperware bowl and put them into the refrigerator. Got them out the next day, and they all looked dead, frozen or whatever. By the time I got to the water, they're in there running circles around on top of each other, trying to figure out a way to get them.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, look at that. And like you said, man, I caught a ton of sheepshead that day.
They do love them. That's a natural the food for most fish in these rivers and estuaries, and they do love them. So I've always said the fiddler. And I tell you what, even the smaller blue crabs, they're using it all over the place for the redfish and the snook right now. I was going to mention that, too. I know redfish. When I was in Charlotte Harbor, if we caught small blue crabs, we cut them in half, took that top shell off, and we'd use like a 2-aught hook. Boy, could you hook into some nice reds with those things. Boy, they do. They could smell that crab, and they do love it, that's for sure. But let me ask you this, Bruce. You're on a kayak, and you're taking off from the Edison Bridge, and you're heading up toward Okeechobee, heading toward 75, and you're trolling something behind you on a pole while you're paddling up the river. What are you trolling?
I've got a badonkadonk topwater that I launch up here at Royal Palm Park.
Uh-huh.
I'm close to the railroad bridge when I launch. So a lot of times when I'm going down, I'll be going down towards Edison Bridge and that. And I'll throw that badonkadonk or Super Spook Junior that I've got.
Oh, okay, the Super Spook, or what color is it? Is it the bone, or?
It's like a pearl.
Yep, that's the one I use. I love that thing. It's got the silver gill marks on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that sucker works great. I love that. They're spooky. And what color is the badonkadonk you use? Is that the?
I've got several of those. I use it's kind of a clear with a red.
Oh yeah.
The red face on it, and then I've got the other one is kind of a silver with a black top. Black back.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a blue one also. Blue one I've had luck with up north up in Newport Richie catching, ladyfish.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Those little suckers come out of nowhere. They'll snag just about anything, too. They're about as aggressive as trout.
They are. They go crazy. If it's moving through the water, they're usually in a competition with one another to get the bait, so they'll nail it.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. You know what works on the Caloosahatchee. If you're trolling up the river and just taking it easy and sipping a beer, whether you're in a nice little boat or whether you're in a kayak paddling or in a canoe, badonkadonk, he's using the bone color, and it sounds like it's stuff that matches the bait, the blackbacks, greenbacks, stuff like that. So pretty sweet.
Yeah, I switch them up from time to time and use different colors and that, but a lot of times if I'm just drifting down with the current of the river, it seems like that works pretty good. It has before up in Newport Richie, and that especially on the flats up there. I catch the tide pulling me out. I guess it mimics the way bait fish get pulled out on the tide.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure it does. Anytime you're really flowing with the water, I think a lot of these aggressive fish, like the trout, the snook, and everything, they're kind of laying in wait. So if the current's right and you're moving in the right direction and they see it as some kind of bait fish kind of washing out or flowing with the tide, they're going to grab it. You know, that's what they're looking for. So what's your plan for next week? What are you going to go out fishing for this afternoon or for next week?
Well, if I get out this afternoon, I'm going to go up here and probably stay on the backside of, like I said, Midway and Beautiful Island up by the railroad trestle. Trying to stay out of the wind. Tomorrow the winds are supposed to only be about 8 miles an hour, so that's only about a 4-mile paddle. So.
Oh yeah, well how about like that Midway area? Where do you usually head, on the residential side or over by the estuaries on the north end of the river?
I'm more over on the south side, within that area by that park and that. Now I do go around like Midway Island, and I'll go through the gate at the railroad drawbridge.
Yep.
And go up in there, and that's when I'll fish up around Beautiful Island there. But I'm more on the north side of Beautiful Island when I fish there.
Oh yeah, it's a nice area. That's a nice channel that runs into it, and a couple of flats that right along get really beautiful.
That's why I fish there, because it seems like, like you said, it's more of a flats area. And that's what I have a little bit more experience doing from the kayak, from living up in Newport Richie, is fishing the flats. I like the grass flats especially. Flats.
We're doing great in the grass flats up here. You know, I think all of the Gulf Coast right now, like you said, with the fish up in the estuary spawning, you know, the grass flats are just packed full of bait fish and spawning big fish. So there you have it, folks. The Caloosahatchee River, catching trout up around the trusses, up around those islands and estuaries, using a bone-colored top bait, some badonkey-donk baits, also, like you said, shrimp.
Soft bait's been catching a lot too. Soft baits, how good they've worked.
It's everybody. Everybody's using the soft baits too. And you know what? When you have this many fish up in the estuaries, they're looking for food. They're competing for food. So you know, you get up into them. You got a kayak. You can get up close to the fish and set that bait in front of them. You're gonna have pretty good luck.
Let you take off here. I'm gonna get busy and get the kayak loaded, I think, and head on out, see what I can do.
Sounds good. I think I'm going to go, we've been talking about Midway and Edgewater. I think I'm going to go down there and play with those bridges a little bit, see if I can pull a snook out today.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, Bruce, I sure do appreciate it, bud. And we're going to do a little editing and get this thing posted probably tomorrow morning. And I'll send you a message and let you know.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Hey, I sure do appreciate your input, buddy. You have a great weekend and a great day out there fishing.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
It's always a great show with Bruce. I sure appreciate it, Bruce. You know, the Caloosahatchee is just a great place to fish. If you're going up toward Okeechobee and past the power plant, you know, you get into the brackish water, a little more of an estuary area. As you're heading out toward the mouth of the Caloosahatchee, you got Punta Rasa, you've got Sanibel out there. You can head north into Charlotte Harbor around Bokeelia and Matlacha, and even up into the Peace River, the Myakka, if you really want to get adventurous. Or you can head down south and, you know, go around Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, and out into the Gulf. It's just, you know, just a beautiful area. So really glad to have that report. Thanks a lot. We sure appreciate it, Bruce, and using some great baits. He's catching some nice trout. He's out there exercising on his kayak, boy, getting that knee in place and catching some pretty fish in the same time. So that's great. Good advice for everybody. Get out there and exercise. If you want to get some rehab for that knee, the leg, whatever you got worked on, get out there and do some fishing, do some kayaking. Jump in the water, do some swimming, why not? Anyway, thanks again, Bruce, and we're going to get back to him next week and keep up on Fort Myers pretty good. We got a lot more updates coming up, a lot more shows coming up. We got some new pro staffers coming on, hopefully out of Jacksonville. We're working that out right now and trying to work on getting a lot more video in. So we've got some great pictures. Thanks again, Bruce, for those photos, all those photos you saw. Bruce took on his kayak, so some great photos there, and we sure appreciate it. So you folks have a great day. Get out there, do some fishing. You see me coming up with the mic and the camera. You know, don't be scared. I'm not the game warden. I'm not looking to measure your snook or see if you have them. I'm just looking for a fish story. So give me a great fish story. I sure appreciate it. And you all be wonderful and have a great day out there fishing.